Welcome to Queerly Beloved, the podcast companion to Wilbur Turner's Queer Grandad Substack. I'm Gary, and joining me today is Ian.
Hey everyone, really glad to be here. And this week's article is a timely one. Wilbur has written about something I think a lot of people are feeling right now, that creeping unease about fire season.
The title says it all. We used to call it summer, now it's fire season. There's something both poetic and sobering in that shift. The Okanagan used to mean wine country, beautiful lakes, long warm evenings. Now, for many people, it also means smoke and evacuation orders.
And Wilbur opens with a vivid personal memory, watching the wildfire come down Okanagan Mountain in 2003, thinking it was a once-in-a-lifetime event. Then, 20 years later, standing at the shore of Okanagan Lake watching the McDougal Creek fire jump the lake. Same gut-wrenching feeling, but this time, it wasn't a shock.
And that's exactly what concerns him, the normalization of it. When we start treating something extraordinary as just the way things are, we stop pushing for change. We adapt instead of acting. And he makes the case that we can't afford to do that.
So let's get into the substance of the article, because Wilbur tackles the misinformation head-on, and I think that's so valuable. You know the posts he's talking about. It's not climate change, it's arson. Lock up the criminals. That narrative spreads incredibly fast online.
And there's a psychological reason for that. When we're faced with something as overwhelming as a wildfire disaster, the brain looks for someone to blame, something controllable, punishable. Climate change is too big, too abstract. You can't put climate change in handcuffs, so people look for an arsonist instead.
But what does the actual data say? The BC Wildfire Service breaks fire causes into 3 categories: lightning, human, and undetermined. And the number that jumped out at me, 77% of active wildfires in BC are caused by lightning. 77.
Lightning isn't a criminal, it's nature, amplified by climate conditions. And when you break down the human-caused fires, which account for about 16%, arson is only 3.8% of that category. Smoking is less than 1%. The biggest human contributor is actually open burning at 8.1%.
So the "it's all arsonists" narrative just doesn't hold up to scrutiny. Wilbur is clear. Yes, arsonists should face justice, absolutely. But using that as a way to avoid the bigger climate picture is a form of denialism. He introduces the concept of soft denial, where people acknowledge climate change is real, but then quietly normalize it in their day-to-day lives, which leads to paralysis rather than action.
The article explains that investigators have confirmed climate-driven conditions are what turns small sparks into fast-spreading infernos. The ignition source and the fire behavior are 2 completely separate questions. The same lightning strike in a drought-stressed, heat-baked forest behaves very differently to how it would have 50 years ago. He describes witnesses of
The Bold Range fire saying it sounded like a freight train and was melting buildings due to the intensity. It covered thousands of hectares within hours. Some residents of Falder had to be airlifted out because of how fast it moved. That's the scale we're dealing with.
Wilbur then moves on to ask what we humans are doing to make things better or worse. And here's where I found the wildland-urban interface section really eye-opening. The Wumyi, that roughly 2-kilometre zone where housing meets forest or wildland vegetation, is where over 1 million British Columbians now live in high or extreme fire risk.
1 million people. And development into those areas keeps going even as the risk becomes clearer. In Kelowna, real estate listings now flag WUMI locations, which is useful for buyers, but it isn't slowing down the building.
As a striking finding from the study of the Jasper fire in Alberta, combustible roofing materials contributed to 90% of losses. 90%! That points directly to building codes as a lever for change, and some cities are acting on it. Kelowna's official community plan now requires wildfire risk mitigation in designated areas, but critics say enforcement and scope haven't kept up with the pace of development.
And there's an equity dimension here that I think is really important. Retrofit funding for older homes exists, but it's capped and tends to favor people who can front the costs themselves. Seniors and people on low incomes, who often live in older properties built before fire-smart measures, get left behind. This isn't just an environmental issue, it's a social justice issue.
On the government side, Wilber's careful and nuanced. He separates genuine policy critique from political noise, which I really appreciate. The key argument he references is that we need a new boreal forest management strategy. Boreal forests cover 40% of Canada and 30% of BC's own forests. That's where most of the wildfire smoke originates.
Historically, remote lightning fires in boreal areas were left to burn unless they threatened communities. That made sense once. It's not working now. Wilber describes the current approach as chasing gaps with a reactive firefighting regime rather than a prepared one. And BC's National Wildfire Symposium in December 2025 was just a symposium, not a formal ministers' meeting, suggesting coordination is still ad hoc rather than embedded in policy.
The funding picture is genuinely mixed. BC put $40 million toward wildfire resiliency in the 2025 budget. The federal government has invested $12 billion in forest sustainability and prevention since 2020. Money's moving, but the Forest Practices Board says the underlying rules and definitions haven't kept pace with the actual scale of risk. Effort is happening, it's just not yet matching the problem.
One of the more hopeful threads in the article is the technology section. Wilber highlights a Canadian company called Vexel, who've partnered with Ember X Fire Defense to use drones for proactive fire inhibitor spraying, getting into tall trees, steep terrain, and hard-to-access vegetation that would be dangerous or impossible to treat otherwise. They launched in the Okanagan with plans to scale across Canada.
Vexel also has a product called Disaster Field, a smart disaster intelligence communications system for alerts and evacuation planning. That kind of tech, with proper institutional support, could genuinely save lives. And it's a reminder that solutions are being developed. We need the political will and the funding pipelines to scale them up.
So as we come to the end of our conversation today, I want to return to something at the heart of this article. Wilber's core message is, don't normalize what's happening, but also don't be paralyzed by it. Those are two different failure modes. The antidote to both is clear, factual, engaged understanding of what's actually going on.
Knowledge is genuinely empowering here. Understanding that 77% of fires are lightning caused and that climate conditions are what turns sparks into disasters tells you where to focus your advocacy on forest management, building codes, proactive mitigation technology and meaningful government coordination, not just on finding someone to blame.
And there's so much more Wilber is digging into, topics like CO2 emissions from wildfire smoke, the impact on our healthcare system, supply chain disruption, and the rising cost of home insurance in fire risk zones. These feel like they each deserve their own deep dive, and I'm excited to see where he takes it.
You can find this article and all of Wilber's writing over at Queer Grandad on Substack. The channel's called Queerly Beloved. It's thoughtful, well-researched journalism that takes big topics seriously without leaving you feeling hopeless. Go follow, subscribe, and support the work. It really matters.
And if this conversation sparked something for you, share it. Talk about it with the people around you. That's how we resist normalization, one conversation at a time. Thanks so much for being here, everyone.
Take care of yourselves and each other. We'll see you next time on Queerly Beloved.